is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to tonight's broadcast of the Monday Night iRacing V8 Supercars Official Championship. Tonight we go to yet another country as we make our way over to the underused and underrated Zandvoort circuit for what is actually the shorter layout too. So the drivers will have an extremely short lap time as we're seeing at the moment in the 1:09 brackets for some of the drivers, which means mistakes in qualifying could be race over potentially because overtaking opportunities, a little like Brands Hatch, are extremely limited. I, for one, am extremely interested to see just how this racing pans out. Alongside me tonight is Mr. Zachary Hanlon with Jay Kennedy on the cameras, with Scott Fountain joining in just to speak gibberish, as he so often does. But Zach, Zandvoort is an interesting circuit to drive and also to commentate on because, unbelievably, the layout we're using, every single corner except one ends in the name of Bocht.
Yeah, I know that's probably going to be a bit of a tongue twister for us tonight, Bo, but we're going to do everything that we can to keep everything in check. But it is going to be a very interesting race tonight. The national layout could provoke a couple more overtaking opportunities, but they're really going to have to rely on pressuring their opponents into some mistakes so that they can open up those opportunities for themselves. And you can see from the qualifying times that it's very tight, especially from 3rd through to 7th. All those cars separated by less than a tenth at the moment. So all these drivers are going to be looking for every little advantage, given the time difference between all the competitors is so small right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's not many drivers actually on a lap at the moment. One driver that is, though, and doing his very first lap of the session is Mario Vlasic in the number 6 car. So definitely getting the I rating up a little bit more than we used to see for Mario. Used to be one of the lower end I ratings, used to be sort of struggle a little bit, but recently has sort of begun to pick up the pace a little bit in the V8, which is great to see that he's stuck with it and continued his development. In terms of the track tonight, it's 28 degrees centigrade, so it's not the hottest track in the world, so we're not expecting any pit stops during this race, and that track temperature is only going to help it even more. No fuel restrictions as well, but a 111.1 is a great way to start the campaign for Mario Vlasic into the top 16 for what is a great 29 car field here tonight, Zach.
Yeah, very, very big field on a very small track, so I wouldn't be surprised to see traffic really coming into play later in the race today for our leaders. But it is the man who is looking to hunt down our championship leader, Brett Loxton, who has set off on the right foot this evening and has put himself into pole position for tonight's race. He'll be joined on the front row by championship-elect Sam Blacklock. Ross Rizzo and Jordan Ross will follow up behind them, with Jordan Murphy doing a good job to get himself up into a top 5 position. He'll be joined on row 3 of the grid by Kyle Stokes. Christian Smart will start from 7th, with James Duckworth starting out of 8th position. Jackson Harlow had a good race out last time, qualified fairly high but started to drop back. We'll see if he can do a little better than last week. And Harley Haber will start in the final top 10 position.
Pretty interesting 5th row of the grid there. Let's not forget the battle those two had at Sebring. Could we see more here tonight? But kicking things off for the 6th row of the grid will be Damien Johnston, with Jamie McKnight just following up there behind Zach Baker. Steve Jensen and Jacob Knight will complete the top 15, with Mario Vlasic joining Jacob Knight on that 8th row of the grid. Scott Clark will start this race from 17th on the grid, right in the midfield, with Sean Thompson, hashtag Sean's Fault, from 18th, Jason Cossey and Martin Casey, your top 20.
And then to round out our 29 car field tonight here, ladies and gentlemen, we have Craig Sharp in 21st position, Justin Wallace in 22nd, David Miller will start from 23rd, David Nanatic will start from 24th position, Liam Wilde in 25th, Rob Harris will start from 26th position, Mehdi Sekai will start from 27th, Brendan Jackson will start from 28th, and the only car of the 29 car grid not to set a time, Matthew Deere, will start from 29th position this evening. Very short rundown into turn 1, but it can definitely get very interesting. And I think turn 1, it's going to really bunch up the field here, and we'll see how they go.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's not forget the turn 1 is a little bit banked as well, so the drivers have that to deal with, which does open up the outside line as well. So this could be one of the best opportunities all race long to really make positions as the cars engage first gear, because the lights are about to go out here for 30 laps here at Circuit Zandvoort. The shorter layout, it's the national circuit, but who is going to walk away with the race lead in towards turn number 1? It's Brett Loxton, who should have the advantage off the start. A great start, immediately covering Sam Blacklock. His cars already switching left and right. Blacklock up the inside. This is for the lead of the race immediately. A very aggressive move. Loxton holding strong on the outside, though, as the field funnel their way through. Looks like so far so good for everyone, but look at Blacklock and Loxton, and there's contact, and Loxton's gone sideways, and all of a sudden he's going to find himself in the grass, dumped to 3rd behind Ross Rizzo. Jordan Ross looking around the outside as well, as they're bunching up in the background as well. You can see the likes of Stokes and Murphy getting very close, and we also have Christian Smart going side by side with Harley Haver in a unique pink livery, now heading out into the unique part of the national circuit. Oh, and all of a sudden there's been a big crash in the background, Zach.
Yeah, that was Zach Baker in the middle of the midfield there. He's just coming up out of turn 3 right alongside Jacob Knight, and possibly just got a little bit of a bump there. The two drivers getting very close to each other as they came through that S section. Very difficult part of the track, and Zach Baker is now dumped way back in the field. So, yeah, very unfortunate for him, but that's what happens in the close quarters of these first few laps, and he is unfortunately not doing too well. But Sam Blacklock now leads lap number 1 around the race. And yes, Bo?
Oh, I was just looking at the replay there for Zach Baker. A huge hit in the wall and huge damage to the car. And you can see there now back onto live pictures, and he is pulling off on a straight line. So Zach Baker, his day is done already. But for our leaders, Blacklock is checking out from the rest of the field. But Kyle Stokes not having an easy time of it at the moment. Look at the size of the train behind him with the likes of Jordan Ross, Jordan Murphy, Duckworth. And all of a sudden, I think that actually was Duckworth who found himself into the wall. And his damage to the panel as well as the Ignite's going to try and take advantage of this as well. So it's ERT, Ford Falcon versus the Fanatec sponsored Holden Commodore, and they're both just wiggling all the way around. And look at that! Up the inside goes one of the CMR racing cars. I believe that might even be Steve Jansen in the 13 who makes that move on McKnight. So already a lot of drivers getting and really capitalizing on mistakes of other drivers. McKnight almost into the back there of Jansen. Not too happy about that move, but nonetheless, drivers making spots where they get. As Mario Vlasic now finds himself moving up a spot as well, but it's not going to be easy because Duckworth trying to hold him off at the moment. Sorry, that's actually Damon Johnston, but he's going to have to go the long way around the outside, and hashtag Sean's fault. He's not no fault at the moment apart from demoting the Fanatec-sponsored Commodore down another position. So out of nowhere, we've actually had quite a bit of overtaking in the early stages of this lap, and it's not over just yet. As you can see there, now all of a sudden Sean Thompson not looking too good in a straight line, but all of a sudden does able to manage to hold off that position for now. So looks like things are beginning to calm down a little bit. The top three with a breakaway hasn't hurt Loxton a little at all too much. Ross Rizzo though, definitely struggling a little bit for pace compared to the likes of Loxton and Sam Blacklock, because of course he qualified some 0.6 of a second off pole around such a small circuit. That does add up over a 30-lap race, Zach.
Yeah, he's not doing a bad job at the moment, though. Still keeping within a couple of car lengths. Doesn't look like his car's getting the traction down that Sam Blacklock ahead of him is, but because it's such a short course in terms of the length of the track, it does really allow these guys to keep with each other and sit with each other a little better, as opposed to a longer track where there's more corners and you're more susceptible to make a mistake. So Ross is doing a fairly good job right now, just keeping it in there. But we've only got 30 laps this evening. We're into lap number 3 now, and Brett Loxton has a little bit of a run on him here. It looks like he's still a bit far back. He is closing bit by bit and showing his intention that he wants to get by, but just not quite close enough at the moment. And it's we've got a car backwards on the front straight, and that is Christian Smart, who has been turned around there.
And he's doing a bit of parallel parking into the pit lane as well, looking at the replay on screen at the moment with Christian Smart. And we'll try and decipher exactly what has happened here. Of course, he was defending from the CMR car behind of Steve Jansen. And as they head onto the straight here, look at the checkup with all these cars. He goes for the pit lane, disappears for a second, and then all of a sudden McKnight and the CMR car get into a checkup, which causes a big reaction on the straight as well. And now we're hearing of Mario Vlasic around as well. So we'll have a look here on the replay what happens to Vlasic. He was diving up the inside of turn number 1 of Sean Thompson. And we'll see what happens there. Of course, the two drivers in front were battling as well for McKnight, one of the Redback Racing Team cars. But for Vlasic, he's going defensive now on Sean Thompson and going around the outside on the cambered part of the circuit. An easy move to do if you can make it happen, but that's not how you make it happen. That's how you end up with a huge shunt and almost with 2 cars over the road and almost collecting cars as they're on the racing line. So a very big moment there for those two, but it could have been oh so much worse.
Yeah, that was a big accident. Very unfortunate for those guys. But up at the front now, Brett Loxton is really applying a lot of pressure to Ross Rizzo, who's just started to fall off the back of Sam Blacklock just a little bit. And Brett Loxton very close, sliding under the braking zone there as he just came over that rise and really putting the limits of his rear tires to their maximum effect. And that's just dropped him back from Ross a little bit now. So Brett getting very close. We can see he's got some pace in that car, but is he going to be able to make those tires last? We're already on lap number 5, but there are 25 laps to go, and if you continue to use your rear tires like that, even just to get by Ross for these next couple of laps, it's going to be very difficult. So he needs to get this move done, and he is looking very close now as he comes into the final section of corners. Turn 1 is probably his best opportunity to try and make a move here, so we'll see if he can get a really nice exit coming out of the final corner here, carrying some good mid-corner speed there and using all of the runoff on the exit. He's got a bit of a run here. He might be able to show his nose out on Rizzo and might go really deep if he can, but just not quite close enough there, unfortunately. And He's going to have to find another area of the track to make this work, because he's just not quite able to get the exit out of the final corner to get that run down into turn number 1. And he's going to have a bit of a look here as he comes down into turn number 3. And they both, luckily, Ross probably went on the brakes a little later there, and that meant that they both didn't clean each other up. But Brett Loxton really giving it everything now to get past Ross Rizzo.
Yeah, absolutely, and out of nowhere, the pressure has been rose so much higher for the Trick Sim Sports driver, currently in second place, but for how much longer? It has to be said that Brett Loxton looking like the much better car at the moment, but as you said, so difficult to get a run on the driver and make something happen towards turn number 1, or even into that next section of corners, which is all cambered, so it does mean that you are able to try different lines, and maybe for Loxton, the inside line doesn't work on this lap around, but maybe the outside next time, maybe next time he's in a position he can try something just a little bit different, use the camber of the road at Zandvoort, which is pretty unique, to make something happen, but getting a run on the dirt is not what you need. Is in the background, one of the cars goes for a huge moment. That was Jordan Murphy, and lucky not to go spearing into the inside wall as well, because he's under pressure by the driver of Harley Haber, it's Jackson Susan Harlow, who's really right underneath the rear wing of him at the moment, so another great scrap. But for Brett Loxton not finding a way past at the moment on Ross Rizzo, you can see they're just experimenting with slightly different lines, because one of the parts of driving on a cambered circuit, Zach, is that there are so many different ways you can approach it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bo. I mean, you can play around with how the corners work and how you can carry momentum through them, and how the camber can really fling you out the exit of a corner. Some corners you can take a wider entry, use the camber, and not even go close to the apex. Just use the middle of the road with the camber to just absolutely projectile you out of the corner. And that's something that Brett Loxton is going to have to be trying, looking around this circuit and finding ways that he can just carry, you know, not so much entry speed or mid-corner speed, but just get that exit speed going so that he can make something work. You can see Ross Rizzo using a bit of a wider line there, and more distance he travels, the more time he has to gain momentum. But Brett Loxton is just really searching very late on the brakes now, and just showing it there, but not able to get it done once again. And he is really letting, these guys are really letting Sam Blacklock get away now. He's got himself out just over a 1 second advantage, but that is quite a bit of time around this circuit, given it's only a minute and a 10-second lap. So he's got a nice little buffer there, but lots of other little battle packs forming as well. As we said, it's just very difficult to really play around with these corners to find something to make it work.
Yeah, man, Brett Loxton, you said he was using the tyres. He was using all 4 there to stop the car from going straight into the back of Ross Rizzo, into the hairpin there. Had every single tyre completely locked up, trying to avoid. Did manage to do it in the end, but that was a little bit close for comfort, but just opens the margin again for Rizzo, just to eke the margin out, so that no matter what kind of run Rizzo gets, he should be relatively safe in towards turn number 1. Hopefully that's not a commentator's curse, but you can see that Loxton just using so much more road at the moment to try and set up a run, but it's not really working for him at the moment. You can see that on a couple laps he's gone into the grass, doesn't do it this time around. Jordan Ross does in the background, who's still putting on a bit of pressure on his teammate as well, but the rest of the cars behind just begin to just calm down just a little bit. But we'll go back a little bit further down the field to the likes of Steve Jansen, who finds himself in yet another battle. And you can see there in the background, you do have the likes of Jamie McKnight trying to go up the inside of Jacob Knight, just not happening. So it's Knight versus McKnight. So interesting little battle of who's going to be the Knight of the victory here tonight. But at the moment, it's just not happening for the Evolution Racing Team driver, because Jacob Knight really doing a great job just defending where he needs to. But the issue for Jacob Knight in the Redback Racing Team car is that he can't afford to get too carried away from defending from Jamie McKnight behind him, because he also has the chance to get past Steve Jansen just a few car lengths in front.
Yeah, he's driving really well right now, really balancing that, you know, defensive versus attacking. He's not really been able to be on the attack much right now, but if he can just place his car nicely and not allow McKnight to really apply too much pressure to him, he's going to have an opportunity to have a bit of a move on Jansen here. But Jansen's been doing a pretty good job at the front of that train. He's been out there for a little bit now, and as we've seen throughout this race so far, just very difficult for the cars behind to really get much done. Looks like Jamie McKnight here has a pretty good opportunity. Maybe a double slipstream is one of the things that they can use to try and get past, but still not enough for Jamie McKnight in that ERT machine as it stands. But Steve Jansen just sitting inside the top 10. He's been doing a really good job this season. Some nice consistent performances all throughout this season. But Harlow is just noticing as well that Jackson Harlow's fallen a little bit off Jordan Murphy now and is actually coming under a little bit of threat from Harley Haber, who's been working himself forward in that breast cancer sponsored Redback Racing machine this evening, which is very flashy, and I got to say, a great looking car. So very nice job from those guys to bring that out. But Harlow has just started to fall off Murphy, and Haber starting to catch up to him as well. Brett Loxton now very close to Ross Rizzo. I think this is the closest he's been all race, and surely he's going to have to get it done now. Is Brett Loxton? He pulls to the inside. He's finally up alongside enough to make something work. He's just got to pull it up now, but Ross is not going to make it easy for him using that wide outside line. Like you said before, Bo, with the camber, is going to allow Ross the lead into the next corner, but once again has to use the unpreferred line. But now Brett Loxton on, he gets it all locked up on the rear and drifts around the rear of the car, and that is not going to help him get past Ross Rizzo. So brilliant defensive driving there from Ross Rizzo, forcing Brett Loxton into a mistake there, and he will subsequently keep position number 2, and Brett Loxton is going to have to find another way by. That was definitely his best opportunity so far, and very unlucky for Brett Loxton. He wasn't able to make that work.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't too much of Brett Loxton, was it? It was a bit more too much. It was a bit too much, sorry, of Brett Loxton into that corner. Unfortunately, just could not quite make it happen. So he'll try again in the next few laps. He's definitely got the car pace on the Trick Sim Sports car at the moment. Just cannot find a way past. And unfortunately for him, making those kind of moves, getting involved in those kind of battles, we'll see what the gap is across the line. And it's standing at a much worse for wear. 3.4 seconds for Brett Loxton to race leader Sam Blacklock. So unfortunately, once again, just race wins slipping away from Brett Loxton, who started this race on pole position 2/10 quicker than Sam Blacklock, but it just hasn't paid off that way around. But we have had one change of position, which involves the driver of Jackson Susan Harlow, who has made a move stick on the driver of Jordan Murphy. So these two were trading paint just a few laps ago, but Harlow did manage to just lose his time, lose a gap just a little while. So we'll see what actually happened in this move here, as just a few little technical difficulties. Look at that for a moment there, right under brakes, and Jordan Murphy's car just wanted none of it at all, just decided to go sideways the entire way through, and unfortunately that is a pretty easy way to lose a position here at Circuit Zandvoort.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really going to free up Jackson Harlow, who was starting to fall off the back of Murphy and was starting to come under a little bit of pressure from Harley Haber as well. So he's now got a little bit of a lead in that train, and he doesn't have to defend from Harley Haber. He's now got a space between him and Harley, who is coming up, and presumably Jordan has used up a little bit of his tyre having that moment as well. So he's going to have to go into a little bit of a conservation mode, just get those tyre temperatures back down. And Harley Haber in the background, really aggressive on the brakes there comparatively, and really rigging that Redback Racing machine and trying to close the gap up to Murphy here.
Yeah, he is. He's trying everything he can. He's seen that Jackson Susan Harlow's been able to make a move happen. So why can't Harley Haber? He should be able to do it too, but the issue is that, of course, they're in two very different setup cars. They're in two very different races at the moment in terms of tyre life, how much fuel they're using, what kind of setups they've got underneath them. And for Harley Haber, well, it might be a little bit more difficult for him to make a move this time around. You can see they're just lighting the rear tyres up again, not able to get the traction that the driver of Jackson Harlow was able to do. But we'll see how he goes in through this slow section of corners. It's just constantly winding, constant radius corners, which load the tyres up so much on the power now. You can see they're getting right out to the dirt on the exit now, right up to the white line again, flick it in, all that curb on the inside used, then on the power, and keep that throttle pinned all the way down this run. You can see that Jordan Murphy with that big moment does hurt his exit, but Harley actually with the dirty air effect had to get out of the throttle himself, which means any chance he had at turn number 1 might have just gone out the window.
Yeah, I think he picked up a little bit of understeer on entry there and didn't quite make it, but he's gonna go. Oh, Charlie! Oh my goodness! How did that not end in an accident? I'm not really sure, but we saw Harley Haber very aggressive into the braking zone last time. Well, that time he was even more so, and these guys battling it out. But up the front once again, Rizzo and Loxton are starting to close up as well. So we've got two great battles once again, and Loxton just rubbing the rear bumper of Rizzo there and almost pushing him through that hairpin there. And as the cars of Jordan Murphy and Harley Haber come through, they're not too much further apart themselves. So two good battles starting to form here, and looks like the trailing cars are really in an advantage here. And you can see Harley Haber in the background there starting to hunt down Jordan Murphy really aggressively now, riding the bumper of that car as they came through, but just falling a little bit back. And Murphy really using a lot of that entry and clipping the grass as he comes in. And Jordan Ross, my goodness, that was a massive moment. They came all the way across the track and then some to recover that. And he's actually lost a position to Kyle Stokes subsequently, and is almost going to lose another position to Jackson Harlow, who's having a little bit of an issue there as well. And we'll get a replay of that for you, ladies and gentlemen, because that was huge just as he was coming off the final corner there. And well, just clipped the grass and almost took a unexpected trip into the pit lane. But luckily for Jordan Ross, he's able to keep his cool and gather it all up. But we'll take you back up to the front of the pack now, because Brett Loxton is once again closing in on second place of Ross Rizzo.
Yeah, and we'll see what he can do this time around. I was watching on board through the run on the last lap, and Loxton took a really wide line trying to carry maximum speed, but he was so wide that he kind of missed the camber of the road, which meant that he actually ended up scrubbing the front tires too much, creating understeer, and didn't get the run he wanted. So we'll see if he learns and goes for slightly... Nope, he's going to go wide again. So we'll see if it works any better this time around. And again, just not able to quite carry the same corner speed in the grass as well. So he's doing a bit more lawn mowing than anything else. But we will turn our attention to Harley Haber, because Jordan Murphy is just completely all over the circuit at the moment on the grass as well, sideways. And that just opens the door and invites Harley Haber inside. And it's not going to be made easy. They're almost knocking the mirrors off towards turn number 1. But the 10 goes ahead of the 55. And Haber finally manages to follow through on Jackson Susan Harlow. But the issue is that Jackson Susan Harlow is already onto the back of Jordan Ross, who just keeps missing corners. He keeps locking up, and I've seen this for the Synergy Sim Racing drivers. I was going to comment on it early in the race that Kyle Stokes and Jordan Ross could not at all make turn 1. They kept locking up, going wide, and again, Stokes into there. They just could not make it happen. So for the Synergy Sim Racing cars, under a lot of pressure, but Ross Rizzo and Brett Loxton once again just getting too close for comfort, making a little bit of contact through the hairpin last time around. We'll see what Loxton can do as Rizzo dips a wheel into the grass, and that's going to hurt his run into this next section of corners. This is Kumo Corner, and I'm going to call it Kumo Corner. It's just about the only corner that doesn't have the name Bokta at the end of it. But for Brett Loxton making his way through the right-hander, trying to carry speed, but it's not quite there. Dips the wheel in the grass once again, which means the run is killed. So unfortunately for him, doesn't look like it might happen. But one move that might happen is Harley Haber could potentially lose his spot that he did get on Jordan Murphy once again, because Murphy's pretty close but decides not to fight the fight. And will just sit behind once again. So for Jordan Murphy, he had a chance, but not content. But look at Loxton and Rizzo. They're once again getting very close as they head into this long left-hander, just constant radius, and he's almost there, just almost turning the Trick Sim Sports car through that section as they now make their way through the plummet, the very fast S's, which aren't as fast as they should be because we have to go on this hard braking zone, and Loxton again locks it up and just making a mockery of the braking zone there, almost into the back of Rizzo. And the gap to the race lead of 4.2 seconds. So if Brett Loxton has anything for Sam Blacklock, it has to come soon, because he is running out of time pretty quickly, as Kyle Stokes now has Jordan Ross for company. So the two Synergy Sim Racing cars have closed up once again, and Jackson Susan Harlow is there as well. So lots of battles beginning to form on the track, but who is going to be the first to make a move happen? Because Loxton, once again through the long right-hander, takes a slightly wider approach than Rizzo, but doesn't make the corner exit speed work.
Yeah, there's some really good little battles forming here. And once again, Loxton looks pretty close this time. He's going to go for it. He's going to go very committed on the brakes. Ross Rizzo's just going to leave that outside line a little bit. Doesn't quite make the apex. He's a little unsure about if Loxton was going to go full send or just half. And he did pull it up. And now Brett Loxton really looking for that line on the inside down into turn number 3 there. And just not able to work Ross much wiser to that attack, and is just really covering off quite nicely there. Meanwhile, behind them, Kyle Stokes and Jordan Ross, the teammates in those Synergy Sim Racing cars, I have noticed them locking up as well quite a bit. as you said, Bo, and maybe those guys need to start dialing the brake bias back a little bit and making something else work, because they'll be overheating those front tires, which is not going to help their front grip performance. And Jackson Harlow has been doing a great job to work himself up onto the back of these guys. He's only been in a couple of races this season, has Jackson Harlow, but he's really been impressing so far and doing a good job as one of the Synergy Sim racing cars once again just up ahead makes a mistake, but will go up to the lead, or up to second and third once again, because Brett Loxton's going to come out once again very late on the brakes. He's side by side this time, really just squirming the rear of the car, and there's contact, and there's a bit of contact there, and Ross Rizzo has been shoved out of the way a little bit, and doesn't look like Brett Loxton is going to be giving that position back. And we'll get a replay of that for you, ladies and gentlemen, so that you can have a look and see what you think about that one. Very close there between the two drivers, and that's unfortunate for Ross Rizzo, but he's bounced back and hasn't let Brett Loxton get away so far. So we'll see if he's able to earn that position back himself. But yeah, bit of contact between the two cars there. Not the best, but we will press on. And this battle behind them, though, Kyle Stokes, Jordan Ross, and Jackson Harlow really starting to heat up now. These cars are getting very close to each other.
Yeah, they are. So we'll see how this little battle unfolds. And there's another one just brewing in the background as well, because Haber and John Murphy still pretty close, and so is Duckworth. Just sort of lingering in the background. And actually, I've just noticed behind as well, Steve Jansen has quite the battle pack as well, which includes McKnight, Knight, and Johnston. So the Knights are all there as well. So nothing's going to happen in the Synergy Sim Racing plus Jackson, Suzlin, Harlow one is going to happen in that little straight. But we'll see what happens with the likes of Jansen McKnight, because McKnight has the run and is getting completely driven across the circuit, almost Rubens Barrichello-esque, right out to the pit lane, but has to go around the outside. What can he do on the outside? And he goes very late on the brakes, locks it up a little bit as well, but the CMR car not giving up. But now McKnight probably has the preferred line. All he has to do is hang tough around the outside here, which he does not, because he gets hit, and he's going to get sent off into the weeds and almost into the side there of Damian Johnston, as well as the Redback Racing Team car is trying to make a move here. So Jacob Knight trying to capitalize from third in this battle, trying to now lead this battle as it's 2x2 down the hill, heading into the hairpin. You can see the closing races there, all locking up in the background. And the poor Dunlop's going to be tortured after that, but so is the tortured back bumper of Steve Jansen as he's getting hounded at the moment. But look at McKnight and Johnston, who are going to go side by side once again, getting close for comfort under brakes once again, as Carl Stokes has lost his spot as well, as this battle continues to rage on. So we'll turn our attention back up front, because Jordan Ross has found his way through, and also the driver of Jackson Susan Harlow has gone past as well. So what has happened to Carl Stokes? I'll quickly go back and see what happened. And I think, yeah, looks like it was a slowdown through the long left-hander before Kuma corner.
I think it was actually the right-hand kink before you go through that dinky little left donut thing. The Hans Erspach, I believe it is appropriately called. But yeah, he cut a little bit. Yeah, he cut a little bit of the right-hand kink there, and I think he paid for that quite measurably. And we can see he's lost about 7 or 8 car lengths to even Jackson Harlow, who he was most definitely in front of prior. So very unfortunate for Kyle Stokes. Been running a good race so far, and he'll now be under a bit of pressure from Harley Haber too, who's looks to be really picking up the pace when he's got cars in front of him. He's like a heat-seeking missile. He just locks onto a target and fire him off, and he will go and hunt it down. So he's now got Kyle Stokes to hunt down and get past, and a couple of positions still available up ahead, because 4th and 5th are still not out of the realms of possibility for Harley Haber, who started this race in position number 10. So see if he can continue his charge. Don't think he's quite close enough to Kyle Stokes at the moment to make a move, but he's definitely closing in bit by bit as they continue around this circuit. And Kyle Stokes just locking that inside right-hand tyre once again, which we have seen the Synergy Sim Racing cars do quite a bit. And they will continue on. That battle for Knight and McKnight is also cooled down a little bit as well. McKnight, after getting pushed out, has did manage to keep his position on Damian Johnston, but he's now behind Jacob Knight. Will be looking to make his way through the pack, and Steve Jansen's actually made his way up to the lead of this pack once again. So it's all kind of reset back to where it was about 10 laps ago for these guys. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of hard feelings, and we'll get some good racing out of that.
Yeah, we definitely should, and there has been some pretty good racing throughout the field, which is great to see, and we'll see just what can happen in the next few laps as Carl Stokes' little train begins to get a little bit longer, because the train of Jordan Murphy and the other driver I'm trying to scroll through, James Duckworth, are all closing up just a little bit as well. So it's almost a 4-car train now, which is great to see as we head to just 8 laps to go here at Circuit Zandvoort. So one of the shorter races on the calendar, but still packing quite a fair bit of entertainment at the moment, has to be said. But no one looks to be making a move this time around, heading on towards the pretty famous turn number 1. I will have a look at Jordan Ross and Jackson Harlow, because these two are getting close at the moment. And like you said, in terms of positions up the field, this is one of the closest ones at the moment, as Carl Stokes actually under a lot of pressure from Haber in the background as well, who really closed up on the exit of Tarzan, who slides his way now heading towards the little cover for the national circuit, which is all downhill. So it's a downhill braking zone, which means you have to brake slightly earlier than you otherwise would, which can catch drivers out from time to time. Maybe, just maybe, that's what the Synergy Sim Racing cars are struggling with, just the balance when the car's going downhill, how the tyres are being loaded up. But at the moment, he's still doing a good enough job to hold off Harley Haber, as he once again just locking up. So he definitely needs to make some kind of brake bias adjustment at some point, because those cars are just smoking them up into every single braking zone. But at the moment, it might just be enough to save them from getting overtaken by Jackson Harlow, respectively, and also Harley Haber. So we'll see what happens from there, as Loxton and Ross Rizzo haven't quite separated from one another yet. So if Rizzo can just get a couple of good laps, he might be able to get a bit of redemption on the driver, Brett Loxton, as well. So lots of battles just forming, and with just 7 laps to go now, as they tick down pretty quickly, as Harley Haber just slides it in towards Tarzan Bocht once again, also known as turn number 1. This could get a little bit more interesting as we head into the final few laps, Zach.
Yeah, I think this has all been setting up. You know, this is a proper sprint race, and quite a few of these guys are a lot closer than you might normally see at the end of a normal sprint race. You know, usually we see a lot of cars separated by a few seconds, but these guys are all still pretty backed up with each other, and even these guys, Kyle Stokes and Harley Haber, are actually starting to catch up to Harlow and Jordan Ross just a little bit as well. That gap starting to visibly come down too. But doing a good job at the moment, and with just 6 laps to go, I think there's going to be a few fireworks in these couple of positions, because this is essentially this little train of cars here is 4th all the way through to the 9th position. So definitely some good positions and some good championship points for these guys to be picking up. And those Synergy Sim Racing guys have had some decent performances throughout the year, and they'll be looking to ensure that they get a good championship result to reflect that. So they'll definitely be fighting for those. And Harley Haber's just fallen off the little bit, the back of Kyle Stokes now, just not quite having the same edge as he has the last couple of laps, and just not quite able to keep it on the rear bumper. But now Jordan Murphy's actually having a bit of a sniff at Haber. He's using the rear tyres very aggressively as they come up the hill there. Not able to get very close at the moment, but looking very good under the brakes. But we will now take you to Steve Jansen, because he's starting to come under pressure from Jacob Knight, who we were talking about just a few minutes ago. And little bit of a bump and a rub there from those two guys, and even Jamie McKnight giving a little bit of a rub tonight as they came through that hairpin there. And oh, that almost looked like a little bit more than a rub. That's a bit of a mistake for Jacob Knight there, and he's going to maybe lose a position here to McKnight, but not able to capitalize on that. But Damian Johnston really getting a bit of a sniff here as well, and seeing if he can pick up 3 odd positions if this all goes a bit pear-shaped. So he'll have to sit back and see what happens. But these guys are starting to get a bit feisty now.
Yeah, they are, and I think McKnight actually got into the back of Knight as well. So 2 Knights making a little bit of contact on tonight, and we'll see how they go in this battle just in the next few laps, because Jacob Knight definitely still has pretty good pace compared to Steve Jansen, but he just needs to make it happen, as Stokes is going to go side by side with the driver of Harley Haber, but doesn't make it happen yet for Harley Haber in the pink Redback Racing Team car. So we'll see if anything happens into this national hairpin, because you can see there Haber just locking up just so much, and also Murphy in the background arrives on the scene. Says, "Hello, Harley Haber, I'm going to try and out-drag you out of the hairpin. Not able to do it yet, but that does give Carl Stokes just a tiny bit of breathing room. So Haber probably won't be too happy about that little move from Murphy. It wasn't anything significant, but it's just hurt him a little bit to the point that it's given Stokes just enough to try and run, maybe be safe through turn number 1 in the next lap. So we'll see if Haber can do anything miraculous, or if Jordan Murphy can actually make anything happen as Haber slides his way through the Kumo corner. It actually might be Jordan Murphy here who has the advantage and might be able to make something out of this as he gets a little bit in the grass. And you can see Haber going slightly defensive. He's not all the way to the left, but he's not all the way to the right either. And Murphy does look to the inside, but doesn't entirely commit. Just kind of sits there and waits for another opportunity. And if it will come, well, maybe that will be the better call. But we will go back to Jay McKnight, who finds himself in another battle, looking up the inside of Jacob Knight. And that was a bit of a half-hearted move. Thought about it, but nothing more than a thought. Because at the moment, it's too far back to make anything happen. Loxton and Rizzo have kind of spread out a little bit as well. But Haber and Murphy could still be the battle to keep an eye on as they head into this section once more. And Murphy's been quick, but he's a little bit inconsistent, I'm noticing at the moment. Just he has a lap where he's attacking quite a lot, and then he has a lap where he's kind of falling back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, that can kind of ebb and flow with the way the battle's happening. And we can see that he's really going aggressively into the corners at the moment. That's not helping him carry momentum out of the corner, which is really what he needs to do if he's going to try and get an overtake done on Harley here. But he did look a little half-hearted as he came into turn 1 last time. Doesn't seem like he's either comfortable with that car as it is at the moment, or he's not particularly in too much of a panic to make up that position at this stage. He might want something to go on with the guys up ahead. But Jacob Knight now has a bit of a run on Steve Jansen. Steve going to come across the track, and now down the inside, it looks like he's just going to be able to pull it up, is Jacob Knight, and he's actually going to get caught up on the ripple strip there and get the car on 3 wheels, which is going to really unbalance the car there, and he's lost a lot of time out of that. So he was pretty much side by side with Steve Jansen there, and is now 3-4 car lengths back. So very poor mistake there for Jacob Knight, just getting caught up on that inside curb section there. And very deep on the brake, way too deep on the brakes, and gives a big hit to Steve Jansen there, who keeps it all in a straight line and moving forward. But yeah, bit overcommitted there from Jacob Knight after he just had that little bit of a mistake. Maybe a little bit of frustration there being transferred into his driving. So see if he can cool it down and see if he can make a move there. But it does look like he's coming under a bit of pressure now from Jamie McKnight, who's got a nice run through this final corner. Don't know if it's enough to make anything work. Looks like he's still just a bit too far back at the moment. But yeah, this battle pack here really starting to heat up. These guys getting very door to door with, or more like panel to panel with each other. Not so much doors yet, but see if they can open it up for us pretty soon.
Yeah, and I think the tires are pretty much done. As you can see there, that it was Jamie McKnight there. It was really sliding towards turn number 1. You can see Jacob Knight just in front, locking him up there through that long left-hander as well. So none of the tires are responding too well to the track at the moment. They're just completely sliding left, right, and center at the moment. But I will see how they hold on as we're on the penultimate lap at the moment. The race has really flown by. One of the shorter races on the calendar, but at the moment, Knight is the only driver that's flying because he is still pressuring the Redback Racing Team car, but cannot find a way past as our race leader does make their way now onto the final lap. Sam Blacklock in a class of his own. Ross Rizzo is closing up onto the back of Brett Loxton, but nothing able to happen. But the battle to keep an eye on at the moment, I think, will be down between the two Knights, Jacob Knight and Jamie McKnight, as they make their way onto the back straight. McKnight a little bit far back at the moment, needs to be a little bit closer to make anything happen on this last lap. So looks like McKnight, we're going to have to do this somewhere else on the circuit. Not going to happen in towards turn number 1 unless he's ultra brave, but not happening this time around. Harley Haber pretty close to the back of Carl Stokes, who locks up the inside front, heading towards the long left-hander before the long descent on the Grand Prix circuit, before you shortcut the national hairpin as well. So Haber also looking a little bit threatening, but once again just running out of time at the moment, because this race is just about over with the race leader heading in towards the penultimate corner at the moment. So we'll see if there are any battles happening in the infield but it looks like it might be status quo because Sam Blacklock is going to make it status quo on the championship. He's trying to do a drift, and that's a pretty bad drift, Sam. I've got to be honest with you. But you have won the race. Round number 10 of the iRacing Monday Night Official Series has been won by Sam Blacklock, who extends his championship lead over second place in the race in Brett Loxton, with Ross Rizzo finishing in third as well. So a great result. The top three who qualified there all managed to finish there as well. Jordan Ross will come home in fourth, with a Jackson Harlow in fifth as well. As the battle behind doesn't really look to have changed positions all too much. Go back to the likes of Jansen, Knight and McKnight, and Damien Johnstone in the background as well, and that's going to all stay status quo as well. So not quite the final lap we might have been looking for, but how about Scott Clark and the battle he has behind him, including Martin Casey, Jason Cossey, Justin Wallace and Greg Sharp as well. These cars all pretty close as well, and unless one of their cars coughs across the start finish line, it might be day done, as Jason Cossey actually manages to find his way onto the grass heading towards the start finish line, but manages to yeet his way across the finish line anyway. And also Rob Harris in a little bit of a battle as well, but not able to make anything happen as they'll dart for the finish line as well. So wasn't the most exciting finish in the end, Zach, but nonetheless, there were some great battles throughout.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Bo. We had some good battles throughout that race, and definitely some good door-to-door action. It's very difficult on such a small and especially a tight circuit as well. But as we said before the race, it was really provoking people into mistakes, which is what got the job done today. And there was plenty of pressure and plenty of very minor mistakes, which opened up the door for a couple of good overtakes and some good racing, which is always fun to see. But one man who didn't really have to do much racing other than on the opening lap was Mr. Sam Blacklock, who took it off the grid, number 2, and came home in P number 1 on the top step of the podium tonight. He was joined on the podium by Brett Loxton in P number 2, and we had Ross Rizzo taking the final spot on the podium after being more or less shoved out of the way into turn 1, but nonetheless a good result for him. Jordan Ross doing a good job to come home in 4th position, and Jackson Suzlin Harlow doing a fantastic job starting in 9th there, up into position number 5 in what is the only, I think, the second race I've seen him in. So very nice job there from Jackson Harlow. Kyle Stokes came home position number 6 where he started. Harley Haber in position number 7 moved his way up from 10th. Jordan Murphy dropped a couple of spots from 5th down to 8th. James Duckworth came home in 9th position, and Steve Jansen moved himself forward into 10th position.
Jacob Knight would come home in 11th and would win the battle of the McKnights, or the Knights or the McKnights, because McKnight, that's a lot of McKnights in one sentence, comes home in P number 12. Damien Johnston comes home in position number 13 with Scott Clark and Martin Casey, your top 15. Jason Cossey almost managed to bin it on the last lap at the last corner, but does come home for position number 16, with Justin Wallace and Greg Sharp pretty damn close behind as well. So a pretty great battle between those guys, as well as Liam Wild and David Nenadick will come home for the top 20, with David Miller in 21st, Rob Harris, the penultimate car on the lead lap, in 22nd, with Matthew Deere 23rd. And unfortunately, the casualties of the race, Christian Smart, who did actually finish the race just a couple of laps down. And of course, we saw at the start of the race, Mario Vlasic and Zach Baker get into a little bit of grief, and I think off camera as well. Brendan Jackson, Sean Thompson, and Mehdi Sakai also managed to find themselves in a little bit of trouble around 30 laps around this circuit for what was a pretty interesting race. But Zach, what I'm going to get a bit of a criticism or a compliment or whatever you want to call it here from you here. What did you think of the circuit? Would you rather perhaps the Grand Prix circuit of the Zandvoort layout, or would you think that national circuit provided the racing we needed?
I think that the extra complex that is taken away in this circuit, particularly in the V8, because it's a very difficult traction zone or traction dependent section. I think it probably could have opened up a few more mistakes from drivers. And I think we would have seen a little bit more racing. So I personally would have preferred that. But Zandvoort is a fun track in whatever configuration you do it in. And that one definitely wasn't too bad, but very tight under braking through that S's section there. So I probably would have preferred to have seen the Grand Prix layout, but, you know, that's just me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that as well. But nonetheless, we did have some packs in there as well. But we should see a couple more packs on Wednesday night. It is the finale, And if any of you guys were watching during the GT finale for the Super Cup Australasia, round number 10 at Bathurst, it was an absolute thrill to watch. I'm not going to spoil it too much, of course, what happened if you haven't seen already, but it was controversial to say the least. And there's every chance of the Porsche Super Cup managing to do exactly the same on Wednesday night as well, as they come into their finale with Josh Anderson leading the championship only just ahead of Michael Healy. And then, of course, on Friday night, the LeBlanc Australian Online Supercar Series does head to Phillip Island. What's actually going to be our last broadcast of the week? A bit of a slower week for us here at SimSpeed TV. But nonetheless, we will be back on Monday night next time around at Phillip Island, which is a circuit that we're a lot more familiar with, Zach, and should provide some fantastic racing as it did last season.
Yeah, well, a lot of drivers really like Phillip Island and practice it quite frequently, because for a lot of us in Australia, it's kind of more or less a home track, as it is for me. So definitely good to see a lot of guys with a lot of experience around that track putting on some good racing. So Phillip Island is going to be absolutely great to watch next week. Don't know how long it's going to be.
46 laps.
46 laps. So that's going to be pretty long. So
Yeah,
I imagine that we'll be seeing a couple of pit stops there. So should be good for strategy. And it should be a good watch.
Yeah, it should be. And of course, then the season finale at Road America as well, which if you've seen any of the Scops finales, you know just how good that will be, even though we might not have the championship fight we would have wanted with Sam Blacklock and Brett Loxton, unfortunately. But you never know. There is always a few twists and turns around the corner here at the Monday night official Supercar Series, of course, broadcasted on the iRacing Esports Network and provided by SimSpeed TV. On behalf of the entire team, Zach and, of course, Jake Kennedy on the cameras as well, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you on Wednesday night.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.